Hey, and welcome back to VFX Tutors. I'm Josh, and in this tutorial we're going to be continuing with our O2 advert sort of robot. The last one took quite a long time, sorry about that, but just trying to be quite precise in explaining things. I probably overcomplicate things and overthink things, but that's how it is sometimes. But yeah, hopefully this one should be. We'll move on to doing the hand. We'll finish off doing the elbow and the wrist and the hand. Well, the palm, maybe not the fingers, but yeah. So hopefully you're enjoying this little series. I know this modelling stage is taking a little bit longer than usual. I just would like to be quite thorough, and I don't really edit any of my stuff, so you're going to see all my mistakes as well. You're going to see how I fix my mistakes, which is probably more valuable. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. It really does help. Thank you for watching and supporting. It's really great. Then let's get going. Okay, so in our previous one we made this. Probably overcomplicated it quite a lot. But we finished it. We made it to a piece that we like. We don't need to do the insides as much because that's probably just going to take up UV space that we don't need to worry about. And we can worry about extending this when we're at the UV stage. So we're going to try and go through and, well, we'll make this bit, the inner bit, that, and possibly the hand. Hopefully that shouldn't take too long. I always say that, but for some reason they always seem to take longer than I ever want. But I will try my best to try and keep it not as long. But anyway, so I'm just going to delete the history of that, and I'm just going to call this elbow joint. And I've got lots of my scene's actually quite messy at the moment, so we'll tidy that up as well. So this is still part of my reference stuff, and this is, I don't know, we can get rid of that probably. And we can probably just get rid of our block joint because that's the blocking of it. Cool, and I'm just going to make a cylinder. We're going to make this middle bit here, and we need to join this on. So it looks kind of wrinkly there, so it could be some sort of rubbery sort of skin thing. But on this one, it looks kind of smooth. I'm assuming this might stretch, but we're not going to do that. Our rig's not going to be that complicated, but it's going to be super simple, so we won't have to worry too much about doing squash and stretch and adding deformers and stuff. Anyway, so I'm just going to select the cylinder and that cylinder. Go to constrain, point, and orient. So now I know that's right in the middle. Yeah. And I'm just going to scale this up. And it may not be absolutely perfect, but we can get it pretty close to the reference. We actually don't need that anymore. So what I am going to do is freeze the transform, so I know that's in the center. Just going to pull this up so now I can see where the sort of hole begins. And I can add okay, so it might do something strange. No, it's fine. And I'm going to select these edges. You're going to hold shift and right click and transform the component. And this will allow me to pull it in and out on that sort of, on the flat plane. So it's doing it to the top as well. No, it's not. It's doing the opposite. Let's worry about that. Let's just why that's doing it that way could be, it's a bit strange, but I'm sure there's a reason. Why are we going to select those faces? Select those and deselect those. Just make sure we deselect all that. We can just Control E and extrude out. We can just do a sort of a rough guesstimate. Oh, I selected that bit as well. Cool. So that's not amazing. What we'll do is put this back down to 0. We should be able to transform. The reason why transform component's really good is it means that it pulls it out on its axis. Okay, so it's doing it better on the poly than the edge for some reason. Do not know why. Cool. We can leave a gap, so we don't want it to be super tight. Otherwise, it just might look a little bit weird. And we could just either just select these edges, vertices, and just okay, it does protrude a little bit, so just see how that's looking. I'm gonna select these edge loops, just slightly scale it down so there's a little bit more room on the inside. Not that it matters because you don't really see it. Just, yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm going to delete all these, select those edges, make sure you haven't selected any other edges by accident. Ooh. Just Control E. Just extrude those in enough. Then I can hold Shift and fill hole. Obviously, we don't want to leave it like that because it's going to make a bit of a mess. But what we can do now is just go to our modeling toolkit, multi-cut. And we can just finish off these edge loops. And we can smooth this out afterwards. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect right now. Cool. What we can do is just go to here and just go to our, where has it gone? Sculpting. We can choose the relax. We want smooth, we want to just relax. Let's just relax that middle bit for now. Then we'll relax the rest after we've done the bevels. So make sure you actually select the vertex, otherwise it will just add one really close to it. Ooh. Try and do this bit as quick as possible so we can actually move on to the hand. Cool. And we'll just go to relax again and ooh. Cool. So we've made that pretty basic shape. It's nothing fancy. Let's bevel this and bevel that. We don't really see any of this on the inside, we only see that edge, so we can cool. So we have this very basic shape that we've created. I'm going to keep that edge. So now we need to sort of add a cylinder to this. So a lot of the ways we've been doing it is by using quad draw, and that's absolutely fine. Most of the times I would have probably done it this time as well. I just got too ahead of myself to just get this done as fast as possible, and I wasn't really thinking much of it through. I was just going at it as fast as possible. So why didn't you do that? Okay, let's just select that and then go constraint, point, and orient, so it's in the exact same orientation. Position, pull this out, rotate that 90 degrees. Cool. And now we have this sort of elbow joint here. It's hard to tell what's going on. Can only assume that it's probably a smaller segment that goes into this, and this bit goes over the top. So we could probably safely assume that this is a little bit smaller. It's really quite hard to tell. Maybe just leave it something like that. Cool. So we've got this shape, and we now need to add to make this cylindrical and have this point out. So in theory, we could just leave it as that. And as it pains me to do it, I don't want to do it. If you want to leave it like, this is more like if you want to show you off your modeling and stuff, it's perfectly fine. You can effectively leave it as that. What I am going to do is attach it, because that's just how I want to do it. I don't know. It's just how I like to do things. You don't have to. So I'm going to really reduce this quite a lot, just so I can sort of keep this without breaking any of it. So if I actually duplicate that, that's what I do a lot. I duplicate and let's save it as well. I save a lot and duplicate a lot, so I don't, because if you have a lot of undos, it can slow stuff down sometimes. So I'm actually going to go back to my modeling, mesh, smooth. Yeah, and I just like doing it this way because I know what does it start coming as? Purely just because I find it easier, and I know that I'm always going to be working with smooth objects, so I know you might think I'm mad doing this every time, but actually it's for me it's not that bad after a while. Cool. So yeah, so I've kind of subdivided them equally. So there's, as you can see here, this lines up with this one. This one lines up with here, and we've approximately got about 2 spaces in between. So this allows me, like I'm not using every edge, I'm just visualizing the smoothness between it. Mesh, combine. And what I want to do, I just want to, I'm going to start off with this edge first. Where did that go? I think it went on the inside. No, it's because I got that. I do have isolated view on. So there are plenty of ways that you can do this. It's probably because I don't model every day. Do a lot of different things, but people that model every day are probably like, what am I doing? So I actually have to do all of that. We can just duplicate, or we can just go through the. It's not that high a resolution poly count, so we can live with a bit of manual work. Cool. So I'm just going to do the same again here. I'm just trying to keep it all evenly spaced, because it can be quite difficult to keep these sort of curves. It's the only reason I do it is because actually, like, it may look a bit silly, but it's just, once you've done it a couple of times, it's the simplest way to keep these natural curves that I want from my pipes, or not pipes, the sort of joints. I am going to let's hide that. I'm just doing that stuff like this. It just means I can plan my topology. It's the only reason I do it. Say if you're just getting into some sort of modeling of stuff, it's so we still want to keep this sort of even. You can see we just made this sort of patch. I'm sure there's you could probably Boolean and clean it up afterwards, but don't really use Booleans. Booleans are okay, but I try to avoid them if I can, because there are. I know this seems incredibly manual way of doing things, but for me it's much cleaner. Cool. Let's just say we can add those. Let me just finish off this patch. Hold on, what time are we on? We're on 20 minutes. We haven't even got to the hand, but cool. So we've made our patch, and that's what we really need to do. And we can add an edge loop in there if we want a supporting edge. So if we press 3, it's going to be nice and smooth. Let's turn our quad draw off and that. Where's our original one? It's in here somewhere. Cool. So now we've obviously got that. So if we actually mesh, just move that. Bring our X-ray up. And we should have a nice amount of polys, and we can just attach that to there. Just got multi-cut. In fact, where is it? It's like here. And there. So now we've just made that patch. Now what we do need to do is, it's not quite perfect, but we need to make sure that we make sure there's enough edge loops for this to marry up to. Here we go, mesh, combine. So we probably want to use our target weld on some of these. Make sure you don't have anything selected in the back. If we turn our target weld off, and you can see we've got our shape. And it's working pretty well. So if we look at our reference, it probably goes in a little bit. We can Control E and extrude that out. And unknown length, I guess, but we'll add a supporting edge. We don't need to actually fill that out because we're not actually, we won't ever see it. Depends on what sort of models that you're doing, but yeah. Cool. So we're getting there. What are we on? 24 minutes. I'm just going to save that. I'm having a lot of crashes recently. Cool. So the hand is basically another cylinder with a ball on the end. So it's not anything super complex. But I'd also say, remember, like when we took a long time doing this. But also, these are kind of duplicates of down here as well. So we're actually, in the long run, we're saving ourselves time by doing it properly once. But yeah, so I'm not really sure what's going on with this one, but we'll duplicate this because it's going to be simple. And what I'll do is just start off with a sphere. Select that. I'm going to delete my history. I do need to start renaming stuff because it's getting a bit messy. Point and orient, just so it's in the right place. Cool. That should be fairly simple to create. I'm just going to make it from a sphere. And we know that this is going to go over the top, so we can gauge that size by how much it's going to sort of overlap. By imagining we're going to extrude probably that much down. Let's make sure we get all that. Don't leave any geo behind. Sorry, it was that one, wasn't it? Just Control E. And it's not very long on that one, so I imagine there's some very fancy rigging going on here as well. So we're not going to worry too much about that. We're not going to do complicated rigs, so Control E. Just scale that in. Control E to extrude, and we can bring that in as well. So if we look at this one, it's kind of, we have built that sort of pneumatic sort of piston there, but we do need to make it a little bit longer. This is why you have your reference. Even though our reference is starting to look a little bit off, but we can adjust it because that's obviously a rough reference. It still needs to maintain its relative size with the actual body. We're just refining everything as we go along. So that wouldn't hurt if that was a little bit bigger. Only a tiny bit. These are relatively a similar amount of distance. Don't forget that's going to be hidden in the hand, so. Could even be too long, slightly. So imagine that can stretch out a bit further, and also with this bit as well, so that can stretch out, but we'll figure that out a bit more later. Cool, so we want that sharp edge there, so that's definitely going to be a bevel. And we'll do the same here, but not as sharp. It's quite soft. It's a little bit softer. So you've got a nice little wrist shape. And it's up to you whether if you want to... We're not going to see in there, but do you know what? It wouldn't do any harm to sort of clean that up, because even though if it's not looking amazing, it's not going to really matter. We don't actually really even need to do that because we're not seeing it, so we could even leave it like that to save on UV space. But if we did it, it feels a bit unfinished, or just like skipping it. But it's relatively easy to turn this into a quad. And we don't see it anyway, so it doesn't particularly matter. Cool. And we leave that as that. And now that's all quads. And that's all fine. Cool, let's now try and get onto the hand. So let's rename this. Cool. So we can also play with the skit, because obviously our reference is huge, but we'll go off from the hand because the hand's it's quite an unusual size, but sort of caricature sort of size, and we can adjust this where it needs to be. It's not entirely that far off. Forget, like, when you're looking at the reference, our reference was super rough. Obviously we want to keep to it as a guide. See how we've sort of kept this length. This might need to be a little bit wider. Because don't forget, we used our reference to sort of match that. So it's worth keeping to it just for the sake of because this is what the client wants. There's nothing else really said about it. If he wants it, he wants it. Cool. And what I'm going to do is quite a complex shape here, but I don't think find the inside of the hand. It's kind of just like hollow. It's not anything else inside it. It looks like it's got a little curve here. It just looks like a sort of a case. So it should be fairly simple, and we'll try and get that done. Just the palm of the hand, so we can get through this modelling. I got a feeling this is probably going to be an hour long, but we've done it quite a bit. Cool. So let's have a look at this. So that's just an opening. That's fine. The most complex thing is this sort of cutout circle area, which should be absolutely fine. So I'm gonna duplicate that and Shift P that out, and I can use this as my base because actually it's not that bad. Ooh. And I'm pretty much going to do what I do with everything. I'm going to roughly build this as much as I can. So I'm going to multi-cut that so I know that's the center, because that's going to have a little gap. Just to double check that is the center, I will should pull it out. It's not quite the center, is it? Cool, there we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to recreate the basic shape. That's pretty much what I do for all of it, so there's no surprise here. I'm just going to start off with smoothing these edges out. And the reason why I do this, I just find it easier. Instead of thinking about spending a while thinking out how the shape is, I can just look at the shape, rough it out, then worry about the topology afterwards. Ooh. probably easier. So they are quite sharp edges. So I'm feeling something like that. If we look at the other ones, it's got sort of curve over the top, so it's not completely flat. Multi-cut here. It's hard to say if that's on the bottom as well. I don't think it is. But let's treat it like it is. It's such a small curve, but it will make quite a bit of difference, I think. And I imagine it's purely for this sort of round edge here. Cool, so we're getting this shape quite nice now. This feels a bit sharper here. Doesn't feel to see how it's kind of curved on ours. Got a feeling that maybe we probably want to add a large bevel to that. Just so we can sort of see it's a bit sharp there. Cool, so we've now pretty much got our base shape. And let's see if we can actually see how much we can actually use from this to keep it. And we've got this gap. So let's select this edge. We can just put a temporary bevel in there to sort of guesstimate that edge. I think it's probably about, it's not a huge gap, but it's not. Cool. So let's hide that previous one. So now we've got this, let's hide that, and hide that. So I think this definitely could be a bit bigger. For this is probably we can worry about that once we've done the hand. We can cool. So now I've got this pretty basic shape. I'm probably just going to do what I do always, and I'm just going to hide some of these parts. And now that's sort of aligned up here. Just gonna go to my modeling, mesh, smooth, give it a smooth. So the reason why I use the smooth is because if you use the subdivision smooth, it doesn't quad draw. I don't think it works too well with it. But cool, so let's do history and same again. So we can see that pretty much got half and half, and we can sort of gauge that by here. Let's move this up so it's in the center. Because don't forget, that's just roughly placed. So if we treat this as a gap, let's smooth that as well, see what we get. Want that in the center, so that's good. So we want this gap. Cool. Can be quite difficult to use it as a guide, but see, this is the gap that we want. This just means that we're maintaining all our previous modeling, like, even though we're making it as like sort of a template, but we're not losing anything that we've created. We're just building it into our new retopoed mesh. And yeah, you don't have to sit and watch this. This could take a long time. I don't want to edit it and fast forward it just in case something will probably go wrong. But as it seems to always do. Cool. So I got that first half. Now let's try and figure out how we can make this work with what we have currently. So, with a lot of modeling, it is lots of tweaks. You just take your time. I think one of the biggest problems with when you see people doing tutorials and they're fast forwarding it, it gives you a false idea of how long things take. And I take a long time to do things sometimes. I'm not the fastest, but it's a good sort of scale of how to understand things take, in a sort of sense. So you're not thinking, oh damn, someone did that in like 10 minutes, but it probably took them like a day. In the grand scheme of things, the speed that we're doing these, and we're actually doing it quite fast, considering we're just doing it kind of on the fly as well. So yeah, that's something else you got to take into consideration. That is actually, we're doing this actually quite quickly, even though it doesn't feel like that. It's quickly. It's kind of don't really want that because there is a bend there, so I'm going to try and keep this. Going as long as I can. Cool. I'm just using all my other geometry as a guide. So there's nothing complex going on here. Once we've got these fairly spaced out, we can smooth that out, and it should find a more natural place. So yeah, it'll be good fun once we've actually like got past, I think, the modelling stages, because we're being quite, we want it as close as possible. We're trying not to just let it slip and make our own thing, because that's kind of a, it's not part of the point of doing this. We're trying to recreate something, so we can actually spread that out, because that's going to go on the inside. We probably could join this onto the existing mesh as well as a patch, and we still might do that. I just want to make sure that we're getting what we need. I'll try and talk for as much of it, but most of modelling is just kind of get your head down and get into it. Like I say, if you've done modelling before, you don't necessarily have to follow these. You can just go ahead. I kind of treat these all as sort of beginner tutorials or just walkthroughs. So we're getting a pretty decent shape here, and we're matching this curve, and the rest of it's kind of box shaped, so we probably could, let's think about making this into, to make this as a patch we would still need to, actually no we don't, because what goes underneath it doesn't actually matter, as long as we are matching the top and the sides it should be absolutely fine. Actually, no, it's not. Let's just get to this point and just see what it looks like with the subdivisions a little bit less. Let's also do this. Duplicate that and hide it, just so I can smooth that as well. That's about right. So I'm just doing this hole here. It probably will be another long tutorial, an hour, but I'll just release it all as one. Cool, so let's keep going with that. Like I So you can just fast forward through this if you're not up to this point, or just model it your own way. There's no set way, really, as long as you're staying within some sort of logical guidelines of the topology. Cool. So what you also need to remember is if we're using this as a patch, we need to make sure we've got a similar amount of topology going around on both sides. So what we'll do is just match this. That's probably the most complicated part out of the hand. The rest is fairly, should be fairly simple. Because this bit is also quite flat, we can reduce this, we can sort of effectively do a reduce on it by adding a pole or a node. So now I've now reduced it down to this, so I don't have to worry about how I can join these, because that's kind of on a flat bit. It's not a huge deal. Kind of all that matters is that we... Nope, that goes there. There's probably no point patching it at this... Well, we patched the top. Oh no, we can still do it. And that's a different piece, that's why it's not going to work. And we probably want to do the same. There's probably no point patching it, to be honest. We can, for the time messing around and cutting up polygons and trimming them off, we could quite easily just quad draw it. So it's also like figuring out what's going to take you time and what's going to be quick. And yeah, you'll get used to sort of working that way. So before I go anywhere else, I'm actually going to merge these or combine, sorry. So now I'm working together. Do that. Let's do the smooth afterwards. So we've got a poly reduce here, and you see it's kind of going around. So we could effectively absolutely duplicate this on top. Then, because I don't think we have the same amount of geometry, so it's probably not a good idea. No, let's do it, because that could be quite painful to endure, doing it over and over. So let's not quite draw anymore. Let's turn that off. Duplicate and hide that. So what I want to do is so I'm just trying to reuse as much of this as I can without actually and if we got a different amount of and if I delete that edge loop, I'll probably delete more than I actually want. So I'm only going to delete the parts where the patch is. So hopefully now that cuts off the edge loop. And we've got that top patch there. So we have got some more geometry here than we actually need. We can reduce it by control delete. So we probably put that in there and there. And get rid of that one. That can go there, that can go there, that can go there. And that can get deleted. So now we've effectively made a patch and kept as much of our original geo. We still need to do this side as well. And yeah, it really depends on how you want to work. Ooh, dogs are making funny noises. So we just need to remove these excess edge loops from the smooth. We might even need to add some up here. So we will need to add some up here. And that was probably going to make a little kink, probably. So we could just double check that. Maybe we did not have the right amount of subdivisions. Why has that got? Okay, so let's. Oh, did I get rid of? No. Let's focus on getting this joined together then. Let's create mesh. Combine. Mesh, edit mesh, and mesh center. This is where it's going to be a bit tricky. In fact, before I do that, sometimes it's actually easier to do this. Just pull them all away. This way, actually. I select the whole edge loop. Minus those edge ones. Just scale it a bit. And Delete that. Don't need that. Mesh combine. We should go to vertex and just target weld. Ooh, make sure you've only got one selected. Sometimes this is just easier to do it that way because you can see what you're snapping to, and you know once it's target welded, it's definitely there. So. Ooh. We can fix some of this edge flow afterwards. Ooh, I just wanting to do that. Sometimes you have to rotate around. Sometimes it's not great. Just got to kind of wiggle it around till it fits, which is not, it's really not ideal, to be honest. It just means that I'm not having to worry about, I could probably turn select back faces off and stuff like that, but in the grand scheme of that, it didn't take very long, did it? But target weld off. We'll just do the same for this one as well. Just get it so it's there. Because we have got some extra edge loops here which you need to figure out. Hopefully, we're on an hour, so we've done quite a lot of the hand. We've done a lot more in this one. We've done a lot of the hand and arm. But modelling takes time anyway, so if you want it to look right, you spend your time on it, especially if you're going for modelling roles. Alright, so we need to add an edge loop in there. This is why it's always good to keep on top of your subdivisions. I think we've added an odd sphere in here. Or does this have a rotation on it? No, it doesn't. Why is that? It's because we're not, that's not a central, that's, yeah, basically that's not central, that should go there. It's not a problem, we can fix that quite easily. But probably the easiest thing to do is just add an edge loop. Because I just don't want to be spending crazy amounts of time on this. If we add an edge loop, we'll kind of still want to, I know I just did that crazy then, but we want to still make sure it's in the center of the edge loop. So we need to do 3 and we can adjust there'll be a kink there for sure. So we will need to adjust that. Might also be partially because there is, it's why we probably regret reducing that round, because now we need those, do the same that side as well. So the problem is, you can see this here, that's kind of pulled it along, which has slightly confused me. So we've got 1, 2. So we actually want to delete that. Match the center there. A little bit of a risky position because it's right near an edge, but we should be okay. Yeah, I don't like it. So let's... let's reduce it on this one. I've kind of come out quad draw here and quite annoying sometimes if it doesn't go on. We will probably need to go into quad draw and pull that out actually once we're done. So can't remember if that's joined. That should be joined. Cool. So we've now made that shape. We've got that going around there. Where is our... Cool. There's our quad draw shape. So what we have to do is just kind of pick it up and place it and it will relax itself. So cool. So I want to come out of quad draw and actually select this edge here and deselect that. Because I'm still got that live, it should still stick to it no matter where I put it, but just gonna bring that out a bit. The same with that. I'm just gonna double check these edges because I think I've broken them. Do you know what? Without messing around and just leaving it as it is, we'll probably just leave it as it is. Because it's not causing us any problems because it's just a hand. We've got a problem here. Just looks like a non-welded seam. So these problems do come around and they can be quite annoying. So we have accidentally merge some points here. So that's why it's quite useful to do the vertex face. So it's always good to keep an eye on what you're doing, because it does happen. Not perfect, but you can see that now it's as I pull this down, it's not. If I go on a object, it's just those little things you got to keep an eye out for, especially when you like accidentally select something in the background and you don't realise it happens. So yeah, don't worry about it. I don't. As long as you find them, it's all fine. You don't have to worry about. It becomes a problem when you ignore it and leave it. And now you can see that's fixed our problem over there. We've not got the best topology around here, but we've created this pretty nice shape. And what we're on? We're on an hour and 10 minutes. Nice. I'm never going to promise that they're not very long, because they always end up long. So. Cool, so we've got that hole and we've got the wrist, the thumb. Now we need to make this hole here. I think we could probably push that out. Why is that not letting me deselect it? Now it is. So I'm gonna save. So it's a fairly equal amount. So I'm just going to match this. So if I use my transform component, whoa, it's not what I wanted. Let's bring this down so it's not anything crazy. Need to get off object. I think I need a new keyboard. It's not doing very well. Cool. So like when we're reusing stuff, and obviously we reuse this bevel stuff, it's sort of, we're gonna come across a few issues that we've created ourselves that now we kind of have to deal with. They're not big problems. Let's just delete all this inside stuff. Cool. So now we have the sort of inside of the hand. And probably looking at this, it's probably just easiest to select that whole edge loop. Let's try and match the thickness there. Cool. It's a little bit thicker, but I think that's about right, I think. So let's save it 16 as. Oh, it's taking quite a long time. And we just need to do the insert bit. So there are lots of ways you could do this. I'm going to delete the history so it's not heavy. I'm just going to rename this as well. It's more palm, but yeah. So we can just extrude the edges in and hide as much as we can. It's tricky because we actually might see inside. It's not like the case of under here where we know for a fact we'll never see inside. So the one thing that we can do is just select it all, Control E. Let's just keep an eye on these sharp bevels because this is where it's going to cause problems. And you can see we can now add thickness. Obviously it works better going outwards than it does inwards because it's sort of, your bevels get smaller on the outside, so we probably could scale it down a bit afterwards. So it's not a huge issue that it's doing that. We just have to scale it. And the fact that we've done this now, we have to sort of figure out what we're going to do with this sharp edge. Luckily, they're quite rounded, so I think we got away with it there. So we can sort of adjust these so it's a bit rounded. So I think it's going to be like 0.3. I do just want to check everything before I commit. And that's why I save a lot as well, because if you do commit and it's kind of gone too far, sometimes it can be a bit of a mess. So that's not, why not? Let's go to 0.4. Just don't forget it's quite far away, so I'm going to go with that. And so if I smooth that now, it actually doesn't look too bad. But I don't really want it to smooth like, so I will just turn off our make live. Just bring these in a little bit closer so it's not so bad. Although, do you know what? It doesn't matter. I don't think. I think it's just about right. I think we lucked out on that, probably. So the next thing we probably want to actually give. Ooh. Make sure you turn all that off. Let's delete the history and save that again. Some strange things are happening in my Maya. Cool. So let's just select the edges. And we can do like we'll see how this goes. I don't particularly like doing mass beveling because it can cause other issues. If you can avoid beveling, I would try and get it as much in your edge flow, but sometimes it's unavoidable and you have to do it. And most of the time it's fine, to be honest. It's just one of those things that can sometimes make a bit of a mess if you're not careful, because we don't want to bevel X, we want that smooth. If we add two segments, it means that it's creating these as a quad and not a tri. And that looks a bit nicer. Dogs are making funny noises. But yeah, I think we're pretty good with that top half. We're on a hour and 20 minutes, so we've done quite a bit. We've done a lot of the hand. Oh yeah, we need to before we do that, we need to probably rescale it back down. So it's roughly in the sort of right size again. But you can play around with that. Obviously, it's pulled things off. But that can all be readjusted later. And we can just flip this in the Y. I know we did a little bit of an ununiform scale, which is not the best, but I don't think it matters for this case. It should be fine. And we've got a little bit of a rotation on here, so we're going to try... do you know what I didn't do? I didn't make sure that this bottom bit was completely flat. So let's see if we can go back first. Cool, before we beveled it. So let's make sure, just selecting all these vertices. Wow, I was like, that's quite a lot, but I think we're in object, so. Oh, I've got a horrible feeling that this whole thing was on a rotation. For doing that, because obviously not paid attention and it's gone in the wrong place. I can stick that under my palm and I can just make sure I rotate that round and put those in uniformal amounts. So, and I can just press Shift and P and that will remove it out of the group. So now if I select my vertices and if I scale them, hopefully there should be almost no difference. So it was probably just the rotation that's a bit funky. So select those edges again and bevel. And like I said again, it's made try, so I'm just going to make 3, and I'm just going to double check that it's not doing anything insane, because it will sometimes, especially on these tight corners, but it seems all fine. Also, if I press 3 and smooth, we've got our hand, which is a little bit bigger, so we will scale it down. It's not so much of a problem if you ununiformly scale it right now, because we'll freeze it. Oh, then we'll duplicate that. Then we'll just -1 in the Y, and hopefully it should be better than what we had before. Cool. Let's hide that. Yeah, that looks good. So we could adjust the amounts. That's overlapping because this should actually be further back, so it's inside. And we can adjust all the positioning afterwards. But yeah, that's looking all good. So yeah, we are going to end it there, and we'll carry on with the fingers in the next one. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget that like button and subscribe. It really does help. Thank you for watching. Sorry it was another long one, but sometimes these things take long time, so I don't want to fast forward it and give you any sort of false ideas of how long things take. But anyway, thank you for watching, and yeah, see you in the next one.